Right, hi then everybody. My name is John Berry. I'm the CEO of Qorus. Many of you may remember Qorus as previously being EFMA, rebranded a few months ago with a launch of a new innovative approach to the world of financial services across the globe. As I think everybody knows, we're the largest global retail banking insurance association, and it gives me great pleasure today to be able to launch the fourth community that we've managed to achieve over the last couple of years. This particular one is dedicated to open finance, and I'm pleased that we're working in partnership with our long-term partner, Capgemini. In fact, Capgemini were the first third party we worked with many years ago, so the fact that we've been able to sustain that relationship is fantastic for our perspective, but more particularly for the members themselves. Lukasz will talk through the speakers we've got for you this morning, but I think I just wanted to say a few words about the community environment and Qorus itself. Qorus is an environment where we are very much focused on delivering value through sharing to our members. And the community environment, which we commenced some 2 years ago with a SME community, has proved to be extremely successful. It's an opportunity for like-minded people to meet, to share, to innovate, collaborate, and learn from each other in an environment which is focused on their particular activity. It's one that enables, certainly for all financial services professionals in the open finance arena, to be able to operate, whether you're a banker, insurer, whether you're in the tech players arena, to get in a closer look at open finance and embedded finance and everything that sits around it. And what we're keen to do is to be that catalyst to enable that to take place. We as an organization are not an organization that has the solutions to the challenges you will face. The role for this organization that I lead is very much around being the catalyst to enable those activities and those interactions to take place. So as I say, this is the fourth of our communities launched, hugely successful in terms of the ones we've had to date, and I expect this one to follow in the same sort of line, particularly when we're led with Capgemini as our prime partner, and also with the quality speakers and leaders we've got involved as well. So we're trying to bring together the best in the marketplace to help you as individuals in your organizations get real value from these meetings themselves. I think the best thing at this stage is for me to pass across to Lukasz, who will track through just the agenda for this morning and also talk through who the individuals are that are going to be here from some quality organizations, whether it's Nordea, Bud, etc. So Lukasz, over to you.
Thank you very much, John, for a very nice opening, a very warm opening of the very new community, which we call Open Finance this time. As John mentioned, our intention is to create a space for bankers, insurers, and tech players to collaborate. This is the ideal and probably the only community where we will find a way on how to connect bankers together with fintechs that are on the same discussion and to bring and probably enlighten the future for all of us about open finance. We will get to the topic and why it is important as well later on with the speakers that we have in front of us. But just to give you a bit more sense of what the communities at Qorus are. So what we are trying to achieve is simply to have all in one hand for the key executives in banking sector, and at the same time for this community fintechs, as I mentioned. So content and insights, starting from interviews with key executives globally, putting together a really nice reports and overview about the future and what we believe is the current state of play. Couple of the best practices in the form of speakers presentation, even from today's session, or case studies that are being submitted by bankers itself. To make it more interactive, we try to have always video recording or podcast ready for those of you who are more ready, probably, to listen to us when commuting or to watch some of the really good practices directly being spoken by the speakers. In terms of events, we have different formats which are either dedicated to and open to anyone, as for example, this launching webinar, or we have best practice forum, which is dedicated to members of the community only, to explore a bit more within the discussions and share the key issues that they are facing. Then a couple of the other, as we have the physical events coming back right now to this space through our annual conferences, which is always a wonderful occasion to meet each other, to get to know each other, and to run the community well even for the future. Because this is the main idea of the community, to stay connected and create a members collaboration through discussions, or even members directory that you can reach out to anyone which is or who is already a member of the community. I'm not going in details, but we are simply able, to even help you with any on-demand activities or approach that you have in your institution around open finance. Now, if we go next, you can see very shortly information about what John already mentioned. We are working with Capgemini as one of our key partner for already many years, with the annual reports that we are publishing from InsurTech, FinTech, World Retail Banking Report, as it was in the past, or even FinTech Report. We started this collaboration as well to enhance it with FinTech Advisor Portal. I think it was 3 years ago, moving into New Tech Challenge, which was an initiative last year, into the community, which we believe is the future of the collaboration that we are creating with Capgemini. On the next slide here, you can see only a short overview of how the whole user experience of the community look like. You can very easily actually go to qorusglobal.com, join Open Finance Community as probably your first choice platform, because there are the 3 other ones. You can join very easily with the button, see then immediately the exclusive content and the events that are accessible for all of you that will be coming to the website and checking it. Right there, you see the latest news, interviews and articles, as I mentioned. These are obviously locked for members only. The important is that in the very beginning of the community, we are opening the space for anyone. And that's why even the events are open from the very beginning to all the institutions that would like to explore a bit more. When we come to discussions or members directory, this is more in-depth way of how to encourage members inside the community to exchange best practices and to find the relevant case studies for them, to help them save the time and go straight to the point with different case studies that they have seen in the market, because we believe in saying that you do not have to reinvent the wheel when it was already invented by the other institution, and you can just apply it to your local geography. Your dashboard will immediately adjust to the preferences that we have for your Qorus and for the community, and you will see only the content and only the events that are relevant for you in the meantime. So we only probably encourage you to have a look at the website, to tick the preferences as you see in your profile, to create a profile, that definitely join the community and then benefit from it later on. We obviously will have a space with many of you individually to try to onboard and to bring you the knowledge and bring you the experience of community to your institution. So I think that's a good beginning. This is how we rebranded from EFMA to Qorus. This is the new experience we try to create, and this is the community plan that we believe that might be of a great interest for many of you. We'll try to actually cover key main topics in open finance. Firstly, it will be payments. Secondly, it's going to be InsurTech in the second cycle, starting from January 2023, all the way to decentralized finance and open API that we should cover by the end of June. So that's it probably from my side, just to give you a brief of what we are trying to achieve with the community. Now I'm very pleased actually to welcome you, our community leader, who will be a connector for all of you, who will be a person to bring always the reasons for the topic, who will be the one to represent the Qorus in terms of open finance and open banking topics, and who we believe is the right person to probably start and launch this meeting and take a lead in introducing you all the speakers that we have here. So Sarah Kocianski, Sarah, over to you.
Thank you very much. Hi, good morning, everybody. It's great to see so many people joining us this morning, or this afternoon, or this evening, indeed, wherever you are in the world. So for those who don't know me, I've been working in the fintech and insurtech space for over 10 years now. I was previously employed at Business Insider, 11FS, and lastly, Founders Factory, which is a VC venture capital and accelerator. Recently, gone freelance, and this is one of my many roles. But I will be focused on helping you, guiding through understanding the open finance space, what the challenges are, what the potentials are, and how to make the most of those opportunities. So I think this community has come at a really, really great time, because open finance has made significant progress since the first issuance of that very, very long PSD2 document for those in Europe. I spent many an hour trying to read my way through that when it was first brought out, 8 or 9 years ago. And since then, we've made great strides all over the world. That said, I think right now is a dangerous time for open finance, in that I think momentum has the potential to slow. And that's because there are a lot of distractions going on in the world right now. We've got a cost of living crisis in many, many parts of the world, and a lot of political change as well. And that means that regulators' priorities are changing, and that can impact the way in which we look to implement open finance going forward. I think it would be a shame if momentum were to slow right now, because open finance can power solutions which can really help consumers and businesses manage any coming hardship better. I think a lot of you will know this, but we've seen the beginning of some of those solutions that can help people better manage their finances, better have a better holistic picture of their financial health. We've seen, the innovation of using open finance to power cash flow financing for businesses and for individuals. We've seen that across the US in Affirm and Petal. We've seen Credit Kudos here in the UK, recently acquired by Apple. And that, I think, is a really interesting example. Apple understands the value of open finance and understands the value of using open data to help customers. And I think that should really be, inspiration to everybody to focus on this area. You've also got areas of things like debt consolidation and debt management. It's a company over in Wales called IE Hub, which enables customers to create affordability reports once and easily share them with any companies that they owe money to. You've got holistic budgeting and savings solutions. So there's US company MX. They just recently launched their spending plan tool for third parties, which ingests customer data and helps them better understand how to make the most of their money. And then, of course, you've got the easier money movement between accounts using, open finance payments. Those are more secure, there's less chance of human error, and given the way that the world of fraud is developing at a pace of knots, that's all the more important right now. And importantly, we have already seen the beginnings of increased collaboration. We've seen a lot of the larger banks and institutions realizing that they really need to work with fintech providers to deliver open finance solutions that help them meet their customers' needs. And I think that's a huge stepping stone on achieving the power of open finance, is this understanding of collaboration. And that's why this community is going to be so helpful going forward. I would like to say that, it's not all roses. There are quite a lot of things still to be focused on. And again, I think this community can really help people overcome some of the hurdles in this space. I mentioned collaboration, but it is still patchy. There is in some places, I'm sure not amongst people who are participating in this call, but there is in some places still an attitude that data belongs to the organization and not the customer. And that's problematic. That's not really truly in the spirit of open finance. There's also still an issue that open finance standards are patchy, and so is adherence to them. And then you've got a problem with cross-industry standards. So if you want true open finance, you need the worlds of insurance and wealth management, mortgages, lending, credit to be working alongside retail banks, bank accounts, business bank accounts. And those cross-industry standards just don't exist yet, because outside of bank accounts, there is still little connectivity. Although there are some areas of the world where there is an awareness of that issue. If you're looking for examples of how to understand cross-industry standards, I suggest you look to the work that Australia has started doing. I think there's also an interesting example if you look at the US. In some places, you could argue, in some ways, you could argue that the US is further ahead of Europe. And so for those of us who are struggling to implement open finance in Europe, you could look at the way that the US has done it outside of and around any regulatory barriers. And that point about regulation, I think, again, that takes us back to standards. This is where there is still work to do, but it is coming across the world, from Chile to Nigeria, Israel and Pakistan. All these places are creating regulatory frameworks for open finance, but I think we have to accept when we're looking at hurdles that those regulatory frameworks are nascent, and by its nature, regulation takes time to implement. So again, I would look to places where they have managed to work without regulation or within the bounds of regulation that doesn't exist yet, to find open finance solutions that really can help businesses and consumers better manage their financial lives. And just to reiterate, I really think that's where a community like this comes in, because a lot of the time we need to talk to each other. Members of the financial services community don't often share ideas, but I think you have to do that if you want to make the most of such a potential, an opportunity with such potential as open finance. It can also help the community find people who can help them deliver their own journeys. So if you're a provider, it'll help you, a solutions provider, it'll help you find clients, customers. If you're a large financial institution, it'll help you find the best partner to deliver the solution that your customers actually need and want. And the other thing that we can do within a community is we can learn from each other's experiments. So we can learn from what each other have done, we can learn from where things have gone wrong and avoid making those same mistakes again. So I think, as I said, there's a huge amount of potential here, and I think working together is probably the best way to unlock that potential for all of us. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our excellent panelists today, who are going to talk you through some case studies and some examples of where they've implemented open finance solutions and talk through where they think the potential opportunities are in this space. So first of all, I'd like to introduce Sujay Pai, who's the Executive Vice President and Chief Technology and Innovation Officer at Capgemini Australia. Sujay has been working in global IT service industry for over 25 years. He's worked across a huge range of roles. He has a huge amount of experience and worked with global clients across the world. His focus is on innovation. His focus is on engaging and creating an engaging ecosystem and assisting organizations to handle technology disruptions like open finance. So without further ado, over to you, Sujay, and you present to us Decoding the Next.
Thank you very much, Sarah. It's indeed a pleasure to join today the launch of open finance. What a perfect timing, and huge opportunity exists in front of us. So thanks for the opportunity. So I have, I thought I will try to probably summarize what we have been seeing in the market for the last 12 to 18 months, because you know our industry, financial services, is changing constantly. And I applied two lenses. One is the industry lens, and I talk about the 8 priorities that I would see strongly and believe in them. And then I've applied a technology evolution lens, which might be quite interesting from a fintech perspective as well. So let me share a view on 8 lenses that I talked about. So if you look at all the major financial institutes today and the economy that we are into, I think the financial stability and risk stands out as one of the top priorities. Of course, if you apply the lens of open finance, you know, the risk associated with engaging a large number of third parties, resiliency, etc., are playing a huge role. As you know, in Europe, already announced the provisional DORA, Digital Operations Resiliency Act, and so as you know, other countries that are following. So I think we need to be mindful of the type of financial stability and risk that that the whole, I would think, the ecosystem will embrace and the opportunity arise out of it. The second important thing is remodeling the value chain. I think, Sarah, you mentioned it briefly in your dialogue as well, that if I have to innovate on the new product and the new services that I'm going to take it to the market, it's not going to come within my own organization. So I need to look at the partnerships, and the partnership can only happen through open data and open finance ecosystem, right? So it might be within my industry or within the other industries. So we have seen, for example, the convergence of telematics, data, insurance, and automotive coming together as an ecosystem. Or we are seeing the telecom companies and banks and 5G coming together to form an ecosystem. So there are potential exists to innovate by remodeling the value chain within and outside of enterprises. Then there are a few other things that have called out, but particularly I would like to highlight the importance of inclusive economy, and of course sustainability plays a big role there. And the inclusivity is also driven by many other factors today, primarily looking at the post-pandemic or pandemic situation, a whole lot of government payments that have to reach, the vaccines that have to be delivered, etc. So how do we make sure the unbanked, underbanked communities are being part of the thinking that we develop, be it the new currencies, be it the new tokens, that is taking a center stage as well. So all these priorities are underpinned, of course, by so-called the open banking. And open banking doesn't just mean technically API and microservices and connectivity. It means building entirely new economic models, building and innovating new products and services. And it's not just limited to retail banking alone. We have seen how banking as a service is now applied in wealth management, how it has been applied for institutional investors, and so on, where we have much bigger opportunities of transformation exist than before. The second thing I wanted to quickly talk about, sort of visualizing 3 circles of opportunities, I call, if I apply the technology lens to it. So the first circle is the digitization, and here is where we all know that various moving parts. And this is a central, stronger circle that I would call it, where lots of opportunities exist, and maybe big data or modernization, operational efficiency, cloud, and multi-cloud scenarios, etc. And this area is going to continue. And here is where the as-a-service models are predominantly developing and will continue to develop. And not to forget the advancements that are happening in quantum and other spaces as well. So basically, digitization phase is the phase which will continue, and that's predominant part of the enterprise business today. If you look at the other circle, which I put it as dotted, this I call it as tokenization's bubble. And here is where we have seen for the first time a disruption coming through NFTs, tokens, CBDCs, the world of tokenization. And as we speak, we had a good session yesterday and day before in Cordacon here in London, which is one good example of movements that are happening in this space of CBDCs, NFTs, and stablecoin. The other dimension of it on the other side is decentralization. So as we talk about the central financial institutes, the emergence of third generation blockchain, Web 3.0, or metaverse, or those concepts are also emerging and sharing the way towards more of decentralized finance of the future. So these circles are still dotted and still smaller compared to digitization. And the attention what I thought we should give is, where is the overlap, right? So the overlap is there on, for example, payments, whole new rails of payments that have come today, bridging the new standards that we spoke about earlier, building the digital assets exchange, cross-border payments, custody, the whole new finance market infrastructure, those are emerging. Or it may be the overlap of decentralization that is opening up a whole lot of interoperability issues. For us to have seamless settlement services, seamless payment across the world, we need to look at interoperability, and that goes back to data security and standards that become integral part of it. So I thought I will share these 2 perspectives, the 8 areas of movements that are in the industry, and the evolution of technology in the context of digitization, tokenization, and decentralization, and primarily the interest of overlap, where we see a huge potential. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ajit. Does anybody have a quick question? No? Okay, well, I will move on to our next speaker then. Our next speaker this morning is Ed Maslavakis, who is the CEO and co-founder of Bud. I've known Ed for a long time. They have been working on Bud since around 2015. Now Bud, which is an API platform, is backed by world-renowned financial institutions and apparently is gearing up to have the largest team in the UK working on open banking. So I will hand over to Ed now to talk us through a little bit more about Bud and Bud's journey to this point.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, it's been certainly been a journey since 2015, and I guess the exam question for me today was kind of to talk about building using open banking, but I think there's sort of two kind of streams of that might be worth talking about, and one is, I guess, the journey of building the startup from scratch, and how we've done that and how we've thought about it. I think it's applicable to kind of lots of different innovation paths, whether it's kind of within an existing business or starting your own. And the second part is how we think about building our technology and where we're going and our focus area, and how that then applies to kind of the core products we deliver to banks and fintechs. Got a presentation if it will share. So yeah, I guess we'll start off with everything. Everything we've always done at Bud has been kind of mission-led, and I think a lot of people talk about mission-led as kind of the ultimate North Star. I think when I think about mission, I actually go right back to kind of what it was and why we started the company. And you know, when we were thinking about it in 2014, was really just an idea, and it was, I guess, an innocent idea, a simple idea that ultimately we were looking at the bank apps and the fintech apps that were emerging and we were using at the time, and thought that, you know, something that was missing was, you know, no one was really helping me as a customer or anyone as customers to really understand their finances in a kind of automated or in a digitized way. No one was using the data that existed and was being proliferated more around the ecosystem, even prior to open banking, to alleviate the stress in my life or to help me in any way. So that was the original concept of Bud. It was a consumer app that was using, you know, we were screen scraping data. We built our own screen scrapers back in sort of early 2015, bringing in the transactional data and helping customers to understand their finances, making some recommendations off the back of it, whether that was, hey, it looks like you're about to go over, you know, dip into your overdraft, or kind of nudge you in the right direction based on sort of goals and activities. But equally, we were making recommendations around a kind of marketplace of other chat partners that we had around, based on your finances, what were the relevant products and services for you. So we did that for about 2 years. We uncovered, I guess, more technical challenges than we realized, and kind of that's what led to some of the infrastructure we've built out today. And again, it's worth talking that, you know, that was prior to open banking, and even in that 2 years, as open banking started to emerge, it was sort of, you know, quite nascent, early days. We were sat with the banks in our office, working on the first versions of the APIs, and they certainly weren't fit for kind of consumer consumption for a number of years, really, and that was, I guess, just through the kind of the nature of technical challenges. So I guess someone I was speaking to last week said, you know, we're the king of pivots. We ultimately just think of the manifestation of the business as a way to deliver on that mission, right? That we really believe in this automation of financial services, because that means that people can kind of be less stressed and make better decisions. So the first guys, as I talked about, was the Bud app. The second version was, we were getting approached in 2017 by a number of different banks and fintech organizations and large financial institutions, to take some of what we built in the customer insight layer and the aggregation layer and license that to them. And what we found was that, you know, to test some of this stuff out, what we had to do was, we really just had to white label what we already had at Bud. And what that looked like a lot of the time was actually we were building kind of test apps for banks, with the idea that we would then deploy our platform into the wider bank. And as we started to scope that out, we realized that actually it would take a number of years to deploy into a large bank. So what we then set up was something which was kind of the next pivot of the business, was Bud Beta Labs. And that was the idea that, because of the procurement process, it would actually be faster and easier for institutions to have this constant test app that we called Bud Beta Labs. And it was because we built a very flexible backend and app platform that we could allow banks and other service companies to test and learn very quickly. Still, I think is a really interesting business model, but ultimately, as that was sort of, we were going through that, we were being the sort of market was shifting, and there kind of was more of a proliferation of open banking platforms, and so more people were kind of happy with the model of integrating an API partner. And so then we kind of had another question that came to us, and that was kind of this was around 2019, which was, do we focus on the payment side of the business, or do we focus on the data and insight business? And ultimately, that decision was made because we went back to our mission, right? If we believe, we're the people, and what we care about, why we get out of bed in the morning is to help kind of create this automated experience, then our part to play is on the data side. So we kind of, that was the decision we made, and since then we've really become, the leader in transactional data intelligence, and we do that in two ways. One is on existing data that a bank or fintech may have. We can add a bunch of enrichment tools on top, and I'll talk about how we built that and how we think about building that going forward. And the other is, we can either aggregate in the UK, but in other countries and regions, we're acting as a layer of intelligence on either third-party aggregated data or existing data. And I guess today, Bud, we operate in the UK, of course, is kind of where our base is, but we have people and teams in Italy, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Australia, and the US. So about 115 people in total now. And more of the direction of travel is, thinking about how we kind of create new experiences on top of transactional data. That's in sort of two paths. One is around the customer experience piece. Big draw right now is the cost of living. How do we help people understand the changing, fixed costs like utility bills, but at the same time manage that with potentially shifting interest rates? So there's some really cool features that are getting rolled out with some of our clients at the moment. And on the other side, it's around lending. So really building out the model around. There's been certainly, and Sarah talked about in the US, they've been very progressive in thinking about lending and using alternative data sources to change some of the and sort of either widen acceptance criteria, create automation through that flow. But actually, there's been very little done using transactional data. More here now because of open banking, less in the US, but they have been more progressive in using data. But I'll talk to kind of why we've seen transactional data used so little in either the experience layer or the or lending. I guess it's the kind of obvious question is, a lot of bankers will say, well, I've got all this data, why aren't we doing anything with it? And then they'll turn to an internal team and say, build something so I can use this. The original challenge comes down to what I've shown on screen is, this is what you'll get through as a transaction description. Either if you aggregate or if you have it internally, you might have some ways of cleaning the data, but ultimately this is what you'll get. You might get some additional POS data, but that can be also inaccurate because that's relying on a rules-based system built by the card networks that isn't 100% reliable either. So we can look at this and we can pull out some information, but actually for a machine to look at this this information set and understand the context of what is Tesco. What is Tesco? It's a supermarket. What is Hackney? That's a place. RD is a road. London's a place. And 24th of April is a date. We know that intrinsically, but our job at Bud is to actually teach the machines to understand these different component pieces and be able to build the context around that. And so to do that, what we've had to build is a data labeling system. And this is kind of a version of a data labeling system. And it's similar to what we've built internally. This is for autonomous vehicles. So when you're creating automation, what you have to do is to teach the machines the context of what they're seeing. And so here it's, you have a manual, the person labeling this data and teaching the machine to recognize the difference between a taxi and a car. And it's the same as when we see those captures, when prove you're a human, what you're actually doing is labeling a data set and teaching machines to recognize images. And so we're doing the same thing with transactions. And that takes a long time. The challenge is actually in the efficiency of the labeling tool, how much human time it takes to label a certain amount of data set that then can train a model that can be accurate enough. So that inherently, that process is what we do at Bud. That's us. We're more and more becoming a data science business. And so why is that relevant to people building products and services in banks? Well, ultimately, the sophistication of the categorization, the merchant identification, and the enrichment is really important. Not only is the accuracy important, but is the taxonomy. So what we've built at Bud is a flexible taxonomy that can map to any kind of internal lending policy or sort of customer outcomes on the experience layer. But I'll talk a little bit more about kind of why the accuracy is important and why it's really, really important at the top level. And I guess if you're taking anything away, it's, we talk a lot about the end customer experience or the end lending outcome. And I think, going back to 2015, where Sarah and I probably met at a sort of Money 2020 or an event, we were talking about all this great outcome, all these awesome outcomes we can build. But I think what we found was no one had really addressed the core, that intelligent core that's sitting in the middle of this stuff. If that's inaccurate, you skew all the outcomes, and you can't do any of the stuff that we were talking about in 2015. And that's why now, with people like ourselves building better systems and more intelligent systems, we're now starting to see some of these automated experiences, some of these better lending outcomes, some of the cost of living tools coming out the back of it. So again, something we talk about in categorization is the compounding uncertainty, right? So what we see in the market is, people that haven't focused on building the core data intelligence is the accuracy of their models, and there is some interpretation in there, is between about 30 to 66% at best. And what that means is when you compound the uncertainties across multiple transactions, that your outcome, let's say I'm saying, hey, looks like your bills have gone up this month. Simple use case, but actually what that's built on is the understanding of multiple transactions and what they actually are. If you're doing that across 3 transactions at an accuracy of 30%, you're 66. You got a 66% chance, or one in 3 chance of being wrong, right? So, and of course, you're doing that usually off of more than 3 transactions. That's why I think when we're interrogating building on top of open banking, it's really important to go right back and really understand the core accuracy of the models that are kind of the building blocks of any of these pieces. And so that's why we focused on this accuracy piece. That's how we've been able to grow our business in the last 2 or 3 years. Specifically, is simply by focusing on this and being the best at this piece. So again, I thought that might be a useful kind of wrapper to sort of start to think about open banking beyond just I get the data and then of course I can do stuff with it. There's a bit in between that I think is important. And so that's what takes us from the beginning of getting the transactions, working it through the models, and then being able to pull an insight of a customer, whether that's for a nudge or an insight or notification or for a learning outcome. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ed. Yes, I can't believe that we've been talking about open banking and open finance for nearly 10 years between the two of us. So that tells you how far we've come. Our next speaker today is going to offer a different perspective. So Sarah Haga, I think I probably pronounced that wrong, I do apologize, is the head of the open banking community at Nordea Bank, Sweden. The open banking community team at Nordea Bank has the responsibility of giving the developers within the organization a great experience, while also being able to realize their ambitions on the open banking platform. She's in the product management team and has responsibility for the community. She's also got a lot of experience in this area, worked across several countries and all the way along the value chain, with the main mission to provide value for the corporate customers. So I'm going to hand over to Sarah now, who's going to give us insight into Nordea's journey from open banking to open economy.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And the pronunciation is not too bad. Sarah Hager, we usually say it in Swedish, but Sarah Hager or Sarah Hager works anyhow. Thank you, first of all, very much for this invitation. I'm excited to be here. I think the launch of an open finance event is right in time, and we are starting to see the first initiatives around open finance reach the market, and we know that there are several items coming also into the future. Let me see if I can get my screen shared. There you go. Now you should be able to see my PowerPoints. So I've been working in open banking and in the open banking organization of Nordea since 2017. It was already in 2015 where we started the dialogues around open banking, and we saw that PSD2 is coming, but we wanted to do more than just the PSD2, and we saw the underlying technology shifts with APIs would give a lot to the bank. So we got the assignment to build the API platform for the bank. And I will today share a few learnings along the way when we've been working with open banking, learnings that you can bring into your open finance initiatives, and also Nordea's first steps around open finance and our own reflections in when we are starting to tackle this new regulation. And first of all, what is this shift actually about? What is PSD2 about? And what we have seen, and let me take a practical example around this. Back in before 2000, in the 90s, when I was young, then my parents used to walk into the branches and used to do physical banking. They would deliver their bills and they would get them paid. In the 2000s, online banking came along, and it was suddenly possible to log in and to see the accounts. And in that sense, it was later on also possible to utilize your mobile. And nowadays, most people are using their mobile phones for their banking needs. Now, and I would say in the 2020s, API banking is arriving. And if you look to the three different ones, it was always with the bank's interface. It was the bank's mobile app, it was the bank's online page, and it was the bank's branches. And now suddenly it's possible to go in and see the account statements and to initiate payments in other interfaces, in other apps. And if we look into the unicorn space, the list of unicorns is long in the fintech space, and it's growing. And if we look into some industries, because when we started with open banking, we started researching the bank and saw, is there anyone here in the bank who's been working with open APIs before? And you may not be surprised that we actually found 0 people in the bank who had worked with open APIs previously. That was, of course, a challenge. So we looked into different sectors, and we found some very, very interesting sectors where we could get learnings from on what will this need and what kind of foundational building stones will we need in order to succeed in this new economy. We looked into the media industry, the newspaper industry, a very disrupted industry. When back in the time again, there was a paper. You watch the paper mails to see, or the paper newsletters, the paper news to read what is going on in the world. Same with the web. It turned into the web. Now you read it mobile, and you probably don't go into your own interfaces or the interfaces of the newspaper if it's CNN or whatever. Often you would go into Google and then you summarize the news that you would want, or you use another kind of media aggregator to give you the needs that you have. Aggregation of news into one platform. So same goes with aviation industry. Huge difference to how we are consuming travelings today in comparisons to 20 years ago. Now we see this is coming to the banking scene with all the fintechs, and as open finance is a even bigger regulation than covering even more aspects, then we can expect a huge shift in those industries, very well protected industries. So on the open banking set, when we started with the open banking initiatives, we had a lot of dialogues together with the fintechs and to try to get their feedback, to get their input. And then we actually started with building APIs for Finland, because we saw that that was the country where we would come fastest to market. And we saw a big value in actually being the first to launch a country in the Nordics in launching the APIs. Unfortunately, when we had launched it, we saw there were no fintechs that had a license in Finland yet. There was not a single TPP, a single licensed third party that could try out our APIs. So the good old build it and we are sure they will come did not work. So we quickly reshifted it to Sweden instead and got a lot of good feedback when we launched the APIs. And that's something that I can highly recommend also for the open finance regulation, to start early to look into the what will be needed to be built, what will be needed to be put together in order to make this possible. And if what we see the trend is going, it's definitely going towards the open economy and more data being shared. So getting good capabilities to be able to share data is also super important for a bank. The interesting differences in between open banking is that in open banking, the regulators actually only stated that you should be able to initiate payments and you should be able to see payment accounts. There was never a discussion around the use cases and how this should be used. And looking back into the beginning, it was mainly personal finance management and some checkout solutions on the market. Today there are several different use cases, and all these use cases are forced to share the one and same PSD2 API. Looking into open finance, it's a different approach from the regulator, which I actually think is making sense both for fintechs and for banks. Because in open finance, the dialogue is ongoing on what kind of use cases should we be able to build and should we be able to provide for the consumers and for the corporates in the end when the regulation is set and finalized. So already from the beginning, looking at what should be possible to build out of this is a perspective that will make it a lot easier for the banks to build services on this. Also to get the different departments in the bank going and to start analyzing how can we utilize this. What we at Nordea have been doing is already from the beginning to see how can we commercialize this compliance initiative? How can we reuse those features that we've built for compliance into commercial solutions? So example, the AIS for corporates, we have copied and enhanced that one to become instant reporting, an API that you can call unlimited and with with some great appreciation from the market. What we also have done is around open banking, and what we will continue with open finance is a lot of evangelization. Not everyone knows around open banking and understands what this shift means, and certainly not the very, very well protected areas in the bank, such as the ones working with pensions and insurances and investments. There's a lot of evangelization ongoing and dialogues in trying to explain what is this shift? Where is it going to take us? What do we have to do? And most importantly, what would we want to do? And one very good example of an item that Nordea already has done, also public case to be found on our webpage, nordeaopenbanking.com, is the partner collaboration that we had with Finnair, the aviation carrier. We are through APIs, through a partner API to them, offering them consumer financing if you purchase your flight ticket with Finnair. So go ahead and try out the Finnair user case. This was a super cool case, and it's received a lot of attention. Unfortunately, the timing was peculiar, as the solution was launched in February 2020. That's another learning. Nobody knew that 1 month later, the aviation industry would be under a high pressure due to the COVID pandemic, and that it would change the lives of everyone around the globe. On some final learnings on to the timetables that we are seeing going forward. In Nordea, we started with the PSD2 already in 2015 and had a strategy finalized for how we wanted to tackle it already in 2016 when PSD2 entered into force. The 3 years of time to implement this is a super tight deadline on the open banking, on the banking regulation part. And we do actually expect the same kind of time frame on the open finance proposal that we expect to receive as it will enter into force 2023. And we expect it to be up and running and to come into full force in 2026. What that means, if you haven't started yet, I strongly recommend you to gather knowledge around open finance. I strongly recommend you to involve senior decision makers and to share that knowledge with them so that they get an understanding of both the impact of PSD2 on your bank, as well as the impact or the expected impact of both PSD3 and open finance. In that sense, including all the business areas that you see will be impacted should happen at an early stage, and then to immediately look into how can you commercialize compliance. I think I will stop right there and say thank you very much for listening to this.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Do we have any final questions before we close today's session? Okay, I can't see any. So we will obviously, if anybody has any questions following the session, then they can be addressed to myself or the other members of the Qorus community at a later date. Thank you very much to our speakers today, to Sujit, to Ed, and to Sarah. Some really interesting topics there, and great to get a variety of perspectives. So I think what we've learned today is that there is so much opportunity, there is so much that we can learn from each other, and that it does make sense to really work together on this to make most of those opportunities. So this community is here to help you do that. It's to help you meet the people you need to meet. It's to help you share ideas, to help you share learnings, and to maybe just, you know, talk through some ideas with other people who are in the same position, in the same place as you are. If there's anything else that my Qorus colleagues would like to say, otherwise I'd just like to point out that these are the next steps for you. In joining the Open Finance community, once you become a member, you could update your preferences with Qorus, tell us and tell everybody else what you're interested in, what problems you're trying to solve, what problems maybe you can solve for other people, and then just join in the discussion, join more events like these, and with your peers to talk through the exciting future of open finance. So I think I will leave it there unless any of my Qorus colleagues have any final remarks.
Probably I'll very shortly, just join. Thank you so much, Sarah, as well for leading the session today. Ed, for your presentation, on behalf of Bat, Sudhir, having, the insights from Capgemini, and at the same time, being ready to be one of the key partner here for this community. Sarah from Nordea, at the same time, because we perceive Nordea as one of the front runner in what they have already applied in open finance globally, and how they were able, to build the community of developers and institutions and fintechs around that. So it's I think a remarkable and wonderful example. So as Sarah mentioned, this is our very first event of the community, and our intention is to start from now to build something unique for all of you, where you can find your peers and you can find, someone from other part of the globe that are facing the same issues that you are, and have already a best practice to that. We believe that based on great examples that we have already seen in SME banking, which we started, the first one, as John mentioned, the second with digital reinvention community, and right now the third one, which we are expanding already quite a lot on sustainability and regulation. The fourth one on open finance is the well-deserved space where fintechs can join as well. So in the upcoming period of time, in the near future of, let's say, 2, 3, 4 weeks, we'll be contacting many of you to explore you within, one-to-one session, a bit more about the community. We'll try to engage and try to identify and understand your key issues and your challenges in your institution, so we are better prepared with different agendas and programs inside this community for the future. So thank you so much for joining us today, and looking forward to have you connected with us for the future occasions. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.